Who are
Sure.
some instances or people in early history of the church, officials, that were pro-science and pro-faith? Because we're talking about that topic with the church. Can you provide some examples early on and their respective theories? This is Katrina in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Perfect, Katrina. Here, yes, there are many, as a matter of fact. And to start off with, here are some clerics and priests. So we're not just talking about Catholic scientists, we're talking about priests who are scientists or clerics who are scientists. First, Nicholas Copernicus. Now you might hear his name come up. Now Nicholas Copernicus was not a priest, but he was a cleric. He had minor orders. He was a canon lawyer. But of course, he was also an incredibly fine mathematician and scientist. And you'll remember him, he is the first person to postulate on the basis of mathematical potentiality a heliocentric solar system. That is to say, a solar system where the sun's in the center and the planets are revolving around it. So Nicholas Copernicus, it's called the Copernican revolution. So this is the big, huge step in science, right? And of course, most people have no idea that Copernicus was not against the church. Copernicus was a minor cleric and canon lawyer in the church, and he's the one that got the Copernican revolution, obviously named after him, going. And not only did he do that, he justified it mathematically. Some people, and we'll get to Galileo in future episodes, but some people think that Galileo was persecuted by the church for believing in the heliocentric solar system, for believing that the sun was in the center and the planets revolved around the sun. That couldn't be the reason Galileo was disciplined by the church. In fact, it wasn't the reason, as we'll talk about, because of course it was Copernicus who had postulated it way before Galileo, proved the possibility mathematically, and he was a Catholic cleric, and the church didn't persecute him. He continued operating within the church. We'll talk about Galileo at another time. He was disciplined because he made a promise that he broke, and not only that, he did some other crazy things as well.
In fact, we talked about actually doing an entire program in the future on Galileo, because it's always brought up all the time. Go ahead, Father. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but true enough. And the second person you might want to attend to is a fellow by the name of Gregor Mendel. And if you studied your biology even in high school, you will have heard of this man because, of course, he is the father of quantitative genetics. So he not only discovers, the possibility, potentiality of genetics, but is able to show quantitatively, where the tendencies would be. So that's the first, genuine rules for genetic typing. And of course, you might know that he was an Augustinian monk, a priest and an abbot. So he was the abbot of his Augustinian monastery, and of course, the father of quantitative genetics. You might have heard of another person too. His name is Bishop Nicholas Steno. And for those of you who are in modern geology and stratigraphy, and of course, fossil dating, rock dating, layering, you will know that he is the father of modern geology and stratigraphy, and he was a Danish Roman Catholic bishop while he was, of course, doing this. And just a fourth person, and I'll give you some resources to discover 22 others in a minute, but a fourth person is Father Georges Lemaitre. And you might have heard me talk about him in other episodes. But Father Lemaitre was not only a World War I hero, he basically got a PhD in cosmology, physical cosmology, came to the United States and became a colleague of Albert Einstein's and Sir Arthur Eddington's. And he was, by the way, he's a very well-known well-known physicists to this day. Right today, we still have Lemaitre Walker space-time, the first Lemaitre constant. Right, so there's lots of things in physics today named after this fellow Lemaitre. But the most important thing that Father Lemaitre did was he discovered the Big Bang theory, which has now become the most rigorously established cosmological theory that there has ever been. In 1927, it was Lemaitre who postulated this theory. And when he was responding to a problem which was called the recessional velocities of extragalactic nebulae. But essentially, that problem meant that there were light sources outside of our own Milky Way galaxy that were simply traveling too fast, and they couldn't be explained by Einstein's general theory of relativity alone. It was the wonderfully creative Father Lemaitre who actually postulated, hey, wait a minute, this could be completely explained if we just assumed that the whole universe was blowing up like a balloon, and that all the galaxies were like little dots on the surface of this balloon, and that space-time was the elastic of the balloon, and that as space, as the balloon, right, as space-time stretched and grew, right, all of these galaxies would be separating from one another precisely at the rates that they were. So he presents this to Einstein, right, and Einstein looks at, Lemaitre's explanation, the equation, which is completely dependent on Einstein's general theory of relativity. And of course, he looks at him and says, well, mathematics is excellent, but the physics is preposterous. Imagine an expanding universe. And of course, later on, when Edwin Hubble finished his survey of the heavens, right, 3 years later, inviting Einstein up to Mount Wilson, just north of us, right, basically Einstein and Hubble came together and admitted, yes, the universe is expanding as a whole. And later on, he told Lemaitre, it is one of the finest explanations of creation I have ever heard.
Right.
So those are just four guys. Stephen Barr, a good physicist there at the University of Delaware, has cataloged many other Jesuit and diocesan and order priests, religious order priests, who were instrumental in the development of science. So if you put his name, Stephen Barr, B-A-R-R, priest scientists, into Google, you'll come up with even more examples. But no, the church has certainly not been against science. We've been absolutely integral to the development of it.